Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Del Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm so happy to have William Hutcherson with me today. William retired about 10 years ago from a busy career as a psychologist in private practice. During his 45 years as a therapist, he benefited from a number of psychological approaches and theories. Then, in 1983, he came across Sydney Banks and was impacted by the power and simplicity of his teachings. For the next 10 years, he applied much of Sid's teachings into his psychological practice, but never quite got the aha transformative insights that many people had. Then about 8 years ago, he revisited the three principles and began to have some of those aha moments and the deep feelings of peace, love, and innate well-being. Ever since then, he's been excited and passionate about exploring the truths of the spiritual dimension. I am thrilled to have you on the show today, Bill. You and I have been in the same circles for a few years right now. And I'm just very excited to hear about your journey. And I know that you were a psychologist for many, many years, but I'd love to hear a little bit about what had you look in the direction of the principles? What was the lead up?
I tell you, first, I want to say that I have really respected and admired what you've been doing. I think I saw you first in a Soul Series thing, and I was so impressed at the time. But to see what you do each week has just been amazing to me. And so I feel like this is really, I'm excited and just to be with you. So I have no idea where we're going. And that's why I'm trying to live my life more now. And I think that's part of what I've been getting from the three principles now that I've revisited them.
Yeah.
I think I understand myself much more in my relationship with this thing called three principles.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's wonderful. Yeah, I will get into that a little bit later, but about how it's impacted you. But first of all, I'd just love to hear a little bit about your life. And I know that you were a psychotherapist for many years, but I'm just curious, what was it that had you looking in this direction?
well, I think that, probably over 45, 50 years. I think, no, I've always been kind of searching and seeking and actually just trying to understand myself better. And I came from a very loving family and I had a pretty happy childhood and so forth. So I don't feel like I feel like looking back pretty privileged. I've had some ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that it's just when I look back over my journey, I don't know how many workshops and seminars and books and so forth. And I think it's all as a way of escaping maybe from my father's religious upbringing that I couldn't buy the whole belief system that he lived by. And he was such a wonderful Christian man. But I had to find my own way. And it's almost like I had to go through years of disidentifying myself from him or his belief system. And so that took me into psychology. And then I thought psychology would help me understand how life works. Well, I think it did, but I left out that spiritual dimension. That's what I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came across lots of other approaches, and certainly, of course, A Miracle was a big impetus, but a lot of the Eastern tradition and so many different ways. So I guess I'm relying on you to kind of corral me because my mind will kind of wander. And I think I just enjoy exploring this journey, this mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I realize it's all in here, I get so fascinated by it. And when I forget to be who I've identified myself all these years as, this Bill, my father's son, psychologist, tennis player, whatever, I just love life. And I find that more and more, I just didn't realize how much I love people. People and sports were always my two hobbies. And so even though my first career path was mathematics, because that's where I got my master's in it, it was more like following my father and my two sisters. They all majored in math, so what do? Well, I was halfway decent at it, so I'll do that. But I think at some point, it didn't have the satisfaction or I didn't get passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a job, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't that. So that's when I made the switch into the more feeling side of life. And as I maybe mentioned to you earlier, I kind of look at it as that much of my life I've been a follower, followed my father. I thought I was supposed to be just like him. That's what everybody said. I looked just like him. And that's why I followed his tradition. And then my mother, who was just a fun spirit and turned life into always a party, always fun. But one of the things I've really learned from her, and I joke it, is like, what do the neighbors think? Oh man, did I learn that? And so I was a good boy, nice, pleasant, whatever, and follow the rules of my father and the religious, whether I could believe everything. I did that. So I don't know, maybe that's to come back. In 1983, I believe it was, that one of the many workshops I went to, because I've been going to see, listen to George Pransky and workshops, seminars, and he brought Sidney Banks down. And so I heard him then. I was touched by something that weekend. It was that feeling that I love having, which is, I'm okay just the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that kind of stuck with me, but I didn't get the rest of the message, I thought, which is, so many of them, Bill Pettit, Mark Howard, all these other people, they got this deep feeling. Like I hear you, I mean, it's just wonderful when I read and hear you share the depth of the meaning of that and how it effortlessly transforms your life. That's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, having taken Est and any number of things, I always felt like, well, I never quite got it. I just didn't quite get it. I got a lot from it, and I applied it in my practice. And so I had, pretty successful therapy practice for years, but I didn't see the spiritual aspect. I didn't understand it. I didn't feel it. And so that's where I feel like probably 7 or 8 years ago, I revisited the three principles. And by that time, it had grown into something quite different from when I was exposed to it back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And because I really kind of left it and just went with my psychological, more Eastern kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Is this kind of what you want? Because I feel like I don't have much. I think my sweet wife, she keeps reminding me when I tell her how much I've learned on the inside out in the last 7 or 8 years. It's become much more a part of my life. And of course, she says, well, Bill, you've always been that way, but I haven't felt that way inside. I mean, I think I've always treated people, whatever, nicely and respectfully and saw the benefit and the good in them. But I just I didn't know the truth that I'm knowing more and more today. Okay. So that's where I'm at. So I and see, I love the conversation about what's going on deeper inside all of us and the truth. And that was always such a thing. See, can I, real quick, I'll say this. My father, he died at 91. The last 10 years of his life, my mother died, and I felt like I really got to know him, and it's like I fell in love with my father at 82. And I just admired and respected the way he was and who he was. But I still didn't have that faith that really directed and guided his whole life. For him, life was very simple. It was faith, family, and career. And he was a math professor. So his life was so, and I think I kind of went all over the terrain trying to find, what was just looking for truth, thinking I found it, but somehow I didn't turn that, and the way I like to think of it, about 7, 8 years ago, I read this book by John Wellwood called Perfect Love, Imperfect Relationship. Now, on top of everything else, I think that just triggered me. And that kind of reinforced this spiritual dimension. And I like to think of it how Nadine talks about the fourth dimension. And so I've just been, I just love looking, reading, feeling more in that direction. So that's, it's, as my wife says, I get up in the morning, I'm full of energy, I'm just ready to go, but I'm just so excited about it. Each day is something new, and I think I'm constantly learning. It's like, and then I love to play with people. I love to tease, the humor and all, because I played tennis all my life. It's kind of that way, but it's who you're playing with more than the match itself. And I think that's what. And so, getting back to you, see, I feel like, I just look forward to kind of conversations with people like yourself, because I know that where you're coming from, I never know what you're going to say next and what you're going to see. And so, I often think of it, the image I have is like, you put two people down and you put some clay between them, and we both are sculpting it, and we neither one know what is going to turn out to be, but hours later is like, oh my goodness, look at this. And I feel like that's what I think that's fueled me in all my years of psychological practice, is that I was always so curious, and coupled with I just really am curious and loving people. But I think back, Adele, I wish now I'd had this deeper realization way back yonder, because I think I could help people, like Michael Neal says, kind of manage and manipulate I always thought of it as like rearranging the furniture in someone's mental house. Well, I could have just taken them another step forward. To really come more from that fourth dimension. I would have loved that. And so that's what I'm really more interested in doing now. So And the last thing I'll say,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful because knowing how much I lived, and I think of you because how you describe your life so well. I lived so much of my life feeling scared, like really something's missing and something's wrong. On the surface, I was liked and athletic and everything, but inside I shouldn't be this scared. Scared easy. Coming and talking to you, my first reaction, of course, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like the fear of being exposed,
Yeah.
of the judgment that I have. And so you're asking me this, and I want to thank you, really.
Mm.
It's been more meaningful to me in the sense that I get to look at this mind that now I'm so aware of, and look at what I automatically come up with, which is fear. And as I begin now to look deeper at that relationship I have with being scared, it's just to protect me from finding out who I really am. And see, what I see now is that it's so clear to me of who I am, and I can get so full of this nice, wonderful feeling who I really am. And then it's so clear of how I rain on my parade and how I get into the clouds. But I'm beginning to now even more, and even just in the past, it seems like every day it gets clearer how I've hung out in the clouds of my life, It's so, and I love laughing about it because it is the game of life, and I can see how much fun. Only now I don't have to approach it with the fear that I used to. I think I love playing, and it's like the more I expose myself to that, I'm sorry if this is kind of rambling. It is.
It's not. Wonderful. I just want to say I'm loving this. I've got a smile from ear to ear. So please just ramble. I'm loving it. Your effervescence, your joy for life. I mean, I'm literally sort of tearing up. So I just keep sharing.
Well, again, when I come across someone like yourself, who is so accepting, so loving, it's like I don't have even time to think about it because I'm just flowing with the energy of the love in the moment, and it just is so wonderful. So I'm thinking, as a kid, I had two older sisters, and oh man, I could go on and on. They were and one just died last week, 91. The other died at 90. Just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. Okay, very privileged. But I would play hide and seek all my life. And being the younger boy, I had to play. I had a sister that was athletic, so she would, in my neighborhood friends, hide and seek. What is that? What is that? And so more and more, I see, I kind of played that with myself, hide and seek, and I appreciate more. And then my two sons, those little guys, we were always playing hide and seek. I mean, where'd they go? And then it's like life is such a game, and I just enjoy it so much. So, how does this relate? Well, it's like I guess it's so simple when I really get my insecurity thinking and I stop believing it and get it out of the way, because that's where I get into my competitiveness. And then I get into that insecure and comparison, and so I'm seeing more and more how much my life is lived in my imagination of not being a good enough or whatever.
Mm.
So I guess maybe you can direct me. I just, and that's when I led groups. I had groups for years and years in my practice. I feel like I'm so much better when I am triggered and stimulated, because I know that gets me into the moment, and then I trust whatever comes up. But when I have to prepare, I get so much in the ego, and then I just grind myself into so that's why I really like, I just like, I just enjoy being with people in the moment. So, and so thank you. I feel like, oh man, I
No, this is wonderful, and you know what you're pointing to, which is I find so amazing. You know, you describe this childhood that was sort of I mean, I know that life is life, but to some degree it was sort of idyllic. It was the perfect sort of, you had a privileged life. But even within that, as human beings, we can still have those feelings of inadequacy, fear, we're not good enough, there's something wrong with me. It's so mind-blowing to me that we do that as human beings. We get into that personal thinking, as you say, where we start comparing ourselves. But I love what you said, that you see that you reigned on your own parade for most of your life. That's such a great analogy.
well, it's just, I mean, on the outside, we look pretty good. I mean, look at you, but so I showed up all right. And my successes out here were okay. And I thought that was the game that I had to play and so forth. Such a relief to keep reminding and knowing. Just as funny, I wrote something to one of my buddies, about 6 years ago, about what do I know? What is the three principles? What have I learned from it? And I wrote this paper to him, forgot about it. I came across it yesterday, and I happened to read it this morning to my wife. My goodness, my goodness. Because then what it shows me is that in the last 7, 8 years, it really has come inside home to roost.
Yeah.
And so, and how I approach this, because every now and then I get worried about, oh my God, because you've had some really impressive people. And that's what my thought system just, I get so easily impressed. Wow. And it scares me because there's no way I can measure up. So I saw this as an opportunity for me to, quote, practice, or at least remind myself to get grounded. I'll show up. And that's one of the things I got to mention. I've developed this love affair. Well, two things. It's so funny to me. See, I think I've fallen in love with myself, just as I fell in love with my dad the last 10 years. And just as like with my wife recently, I told her, I love you, but you had nothing to do with it. And she could take it the way I meant it. And so it's really, it is that. It's as one person says, when you're so in the moment, it's a falling into yourself. It's a falling out of false beliefs. It's letting go that, I'm not in control. That wonderful feeling of surrender.
Yeah.
And so I just.
No, I love what you're saying, and it's so true. We often, that word falling in love. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know even what you said to your wife, that I'm falling more in love with you, but it's nothing to do with you, because what it is we're falling back into what we're made of, which is love. And the more we fall back into ourselves, the more that we feel that love that we're made of, and the more that it pours out towards those we love. So I know exactly what you're pointing to, and I love that, and I love that you are falling more in love with yourself too.
Well, and I've seen, I've read so many of your things, and even from the very beginning, I see how you have done that so exquisitely, and I'm always amazed at how you could take somebody and turn it in and blend it with whatever it is about yourself as such a teaching and inspiring lesson.
Mhm.
And so I think that it's the losses that really help us fall into who we are. I think losing my son when he was 28, it was like it was the color went out of the TV. It was just that I was just in such a for several years. And even though I've been exposed to the three principles, this was in '92, I didn't have enough of the grounding of it. I grieved, I think, in a very healthy, loving way. But I just, looking back now, and I just see how much that really, really opened me up. It helped put priorities for me. And it was like got me closer to where my dad was. I mean, his simple life was just magnificent. And everybody just loved and respected how he lived his religion.
Mhm.
And now, the feeling I have now is that, oh man, I would love to have a conversation with them today, which I do all the time in here, because I think that now I can really, really understand what he's saying. And
Mhm.
I've been surrounded by so many religious people growing up, and I had to really get way over here because they didn't fit for my way of thinking.
Mhm.
But I see the joy that they had. So I really have a positive feeling about there were so many missionaries in our family and so system, even though I wasn't of their ilk, I felt, but I sure understand where they're coming from. And you know what? What to me now, because I had an aversion to some of the language system,
Mhm.
which also helped me to resist that. Course of Miracles certainly helped beyond language. But what I see now, the language that I'm finding so compatible or easy, so I see that life, I just can use life so easily as a lot of my loving relatives use God, Jesus, whatever. But
Mhm.
for me, it's like I have this deeper feeling about life in the moment, in the moment, in the moment. And so I feel like that formless life energy, and I just love the way Michael Singer talks about it.
Mhm.
It just is I love it. My wife loves it. So it's like I have so many people in my head, this wonderful group, and it just, I keep adding to it. And it keeps filling me, feeding me.
Mhm.
Um, so Del, I, I feel like we've rattled on. I just I just appreciate having a chance. And here's another. Long time ago, I thought I did write you a letter how much I was impressed, but I didn't want to get too close to you because I didn't want to be. I didn't. I guess I did want to be on here, but I didn't want it, and so I didn't. I didn't want to have a conversation other than just, oh, you're appreciate and respect you. Bye bye. So it's getting kind of a hit and run, hide and seek. I think that now I feel like I really have so much more uh, substance in here that this willingness to explore a truth that is beyond me, this I, and I like it that I don't even have to show up now. And that's what I was going to say. Okay, I fell in love. I don't know. And you know what is even better than I don't know? Is Byron Katie's comment, I can't know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a different ring to me. So that's the nuances I just get excited about. It's like, oh, and at times it feels like I'm a kaleidoscope, and I just keep turning a little bit, and oh, Biddy, look what I discovered today. Biddy, let me talk. And bless her, she says, you know, she has to, she says, morning to night, I've had enough. I've had enough. You go find some people, you know, go. Anyway.
Oh,
So
I love that. There's so much about what you said. It's so funny because so much of what you said, I'm reminded of myself. Like I used to describe myself as like a flasher. I was sort of like, you know, flash my emotions and then close the raincoat again and run off. You know, it's that I wanted to be seen, but then I was so afraid of being seen. I would sort of have this game. So I love what you're saying about the hide and seek and about the you know, sort of wanting to be on the show, but then having that fear. But I have to share with you too, what's so funny is that I used to be terrified of like psychologists, and I had everybody up on a pedestal. And after doing this show for a while, I looked back at the guests I'd had on and I thought, oh my God, I've been interviewing, you know, these psychologists and people like that. And I wasn't even aware of it. And I thought, how funny, because I was so not in my head in that comparison. I was so in the moment of just enjoying the conversation. And it's so funny how we can do that. We play these games and we, you know, terrify ourselves. And the bottom line is when we're just connecting, we're just connecting.
And what I like that you do so well, and I told Vinny, even if I give her just a thimbleful, she'll do it and blend it in somehow to her own life, and you know, she'll make use of it because that's what you do. I see is this, whatever it is, whether it's this much or this much, you take it and you deliver the goods with it. Like, yeah. And so I think that's a real talent you have for doing that.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, I am so glad that you went from saying no to saying yes, and seeing that actually the feelings of fear and being scared are the same. It's the same energy as excited. So I'm glad that you saw that and you agreed to come on, because you were definitely on my list of people I wanted to interview too. You have so much to offer, so much experience, but my God, your zest for life, your love of life is infectious, and it's just beautiful to be a part of, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's been an honor too. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, hopefully we'll be traveling again soon, and I will see you at one of the conferences or one of the gatherings, and we can meet in person.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at deladeyjones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.